Most of you are busy. Most of you are valued, but most of you are still invisible. You are here because you want to progress in your career. And tonight I'll show you what steps you could take to make it happen. Start progressing forward. I want to challenge something first, because most of the people think that architecture is a design profession. It is not. Architecture is the decision profession. Every project, as you know, is a series of decisions. These decisions are about risks, about materials, about coordination, about compliance, buildability, and cost. An architect is always in center of this. So I want you to think that way throughout this presentation. The value architects create, it's not just drawing, it's clarity. Great architects help clients to make better decisions, and they see the problems that maybe become expensive later. They connect moving parts and they reduce risks. And so these are some of the value that architects create. And this is why architects become indispensable, not because they work harder, it's because they become trusted thinkers. Here is the shift I would like you to understand tonight. Being in demand, it means that people choose you. Being indispensable means that people rely on your advice. And that is when your career begins to change. Because when people become relying on your judgment, not just on your outputs, on your drawings, they no longer see you as someone to complete tasks. They see you as someone who creates direction. So let me put this in context, what we have already done in this series. We started from stuck to seen, from seen to selected, from selected to in demand, and tonight we're talking about moving from in demand to indispensable. And we still have 2 sessions after that. One is how to build your career leverage. And the last one is how to become category of 1 and differentiate yourself in a busy market. Tonight, we're talking about demand to indispensable. It's where your career stops being about being noticed and starts to be about being trusted. And that's the big shift. Here is the challenge that I want early architects to navigate. Most of the early career architects feel that they value for the outputs, for the drawings they create. But the goal is to become trusted for your judgment. So yes, when you start working, you are asked to do drawings, create a model, to document, to update, to revise, to coordinate, to respond. And because this is the work in front of you, it's easy to think my value is how much I can produce. But architecture, it's not just about output. This profession is about making decisions. And the architects who understands it earlier becomes more valuable earlier. The difference is you start thinking, what does this project need? And this is the beginning of indispensable thinking. Here is the trap, being busy. You can be busy, you can be helpful, reliable, productive, and still not recognized, not influential. Being busy can hide the fact that you are actually not strategic about your own career. And I see this constantly. architects confuse being busy with being valuable. And that's quite understandable because they have the deadlines, they have the workload, they have a pressure. So being busy feels like you matter, but being busy, it's not always a proof of your growth. It doesn't mean that people will trust you with responsibility. They will trust your judgment or your leadership. And this is important. And if I can bring my own story from years before, when I first moved from the smaller practice to larger corporation, this is all what I thought I need to do. I was hiding behind the work. And this is what I knew because that was the culture where I was coming from, to deliver the project, to do the drawings, to keep my head down, to work hard. And working hard felt safe for me. I felt familiar with this. I thought this is what they're paying me for. But then suddenly I noticed something else was happening. Directors were calling me to the room to join the conversation, not about my drawings, but they were asking me to give the input in what types of projects should we select. How can we help our clients to manage their property portfolio? What would be our residential strategy? So they were not asking for my drawings, they were asking for my thinking behind the drawings. As soon as I realized that, this is where my career started to soar. And this is what I'd like you to know about, that your value is not just drawings. Yes, drawings, in architecture, we do drawings, but your value is in your thinking. And I stopped asking myself question, how do I deliver this project faster? I started to ask myself, how do I serve my client better? This was the gift. That's how I understood where is my value and how I can therefore accelerate my career. And this is what I want to give you tonight as well. So let me first explain what I mean by indispensable architect. Indispensable architect is not someone who does everything. That's not the goal. Trying to do everything leads to burnout and resentment and often invisibility because they keep their heads down and keep working behind the drawing. The indispensable architect is someone who reduces uncertainty for the team, makes things clearer to the team, and removes the blockages. Indispensable architects are those who make risks visible before they become expensive. Indispensable architects are those to clarify options. They make those options visible, and they also help decisions move forward. They make the complexity easier to navigate. Which brings me to the line I want you to remember. The indispensable architect is not the loudest person in the room. They are the person who makes the room clearer. And this is the kind of value that architecture needs more of. And this is the kind of value that you need to build as soon as possible. So here's what I'm going to give you tonight. 3 shifts, 3 signals, and 3 steps. The 3 shifts are the mindset shifts that are necessary to move you from in-demand architect to become indispensable architect. 3 signals are the behavioral signals. So you need to develop this behavior to be recognized as being indispensable architect. And 3 steps, it's a method for you to learn and to adopt so you become more visible, not just doing quietly in the corner and nobody actually knows exactly what is your value, what you become expert in. So let's start with the shifts. The first shift, I call it from task completion to project intelligence. So what does it mean? When you complete tasks, you sound like this. I do the drawing, I update the model, I finish the schedule, I completed what I was assigned. The project intelligence asks a deeper question. Why does this matter what you do? What decision does this work support? Who needs this information? What risk does it reduce? What confusion does it clarify? What needs to happen next? So this is the mindset shift. You are not just completing the work, but you are contributing to the intelligence of the project. And this is where you start sounding senior, not by pretending that you know everything. It's by understanding what is the meaning behind your task. And so architects ask the question, how do I achieve that? So I've created tools for you, which you can start applying. I call this tool the why this matter filter. And basically, before you complete your task, before you communicate your task, I want you to ask yourself 5 questions. What decision does this support? Who needs this information? What risk does this reduce? What confusion does this clarify? What should happen next because of this work? And so this is what it changes. Instead of saying I updated detail, you say I updated the detail to clarify with the consultant detail. And that way I reduce the coordination risk. I prepare the team for the next issue. This is the same work that you normally do, but you're demonstrating that you understand what you were doing. Let's talk about shift 2, being helpful to being trusted. Many early career architects try to prove themselves, and they do it by being helpful. They say yes to everything. They take more on. They stay long hours. They want to be perfect. They don't want to make mistakes. They don't want to ask too many questions. They want to be helpful. But helpfulness is not bad, but alone it's not enough. Helpful people get appreciated, and trusted people get invited earlier to the discussions. Team leaders come and ask them, what do you think? Can you review this before the meeting? Are we missing anything? What would you recommend? Can you help us make sense of this? You see the difference? They trust in your opinion about this because they understand that you have a deeper understanding what you're doing. And so this is what I want you to build, not just being the person who responds, become the person whose thinking is trusted. And this is where your career starts to open and grow. Here is the tool. This is how you can do it at work. Because remember, the trust is not given. Trust is built, and it's built in stages. So every time you do the task, take yourself through this ladder. You complete the task, you communicate progress, you flag risks that you have identified, you clarify options, mediate those risks, and then you recommend next step. When you do this consistently, you are asked to the conversations where decisions are being made because your judgment is valued. And most early career architects, they stop at level 2 because they just communicate progress. They think that flagging risks, clarifying options, and recommending next step belongs to someone who's senior. But who says that your professional judgment cannot be tested? You have to practice your judgment. Don't wait for permission. You basically engage in sharing your ideas, and therefore you build that judgment. And over time, your judgment is very valuable. 3. I'm calling it from silent capability to visible contribution. This is actually quite a huge issue in architecture because so many capable architects are invisible because they solve problems quietly. They fix things quietly. They coordinate quietly. They prevent mistakes quietly. And then they wonder why nobody sees their value. The problem is that it's not that they lack value. The problem is that the value is not legible. Nobody really understands what is your expertise. So it is important that you find a way to become visible. And I'm not saying that you become loud. It's all about to become clearer. Your job is to help people understand your value. What I mean by understanding your value, what have you improved? What have you prevented? What have you clarified? What have you moved forward? They need to really understand that you have been thinking about this and you prevented something that is not visible. And so the tool that I have developed to help you do that, I call it Indispensable Update. And it has 4 stages. So every time you are reporting your work, you're not reporting on activity alone. You report on value. You don't just say, I worked on this documentation this week. You say, this week I clarified consultants' data. I reduced the risk of conflicting details. I identified 2 decisions, and I'm recommending to follow this path before the project can move forward. And so this short explanation is everything because you are showing how important your work is, what you have contributed. You not just have done the work and someone else has to come and check it, what it actually means. So remember the structure, the indispensable update. You talk about the progress, the risks, decisions, and recommendations. Now that we've covered those 3 sheets, I'd like to talk about 3 signals, the behavioral signals that separate you from being useful to being indispensable. And the signals are judgment, ownership, and translation. Judgment means you understand what matters. Ownership means you take responsibility for moving work forward. And translation means that you make complexity understandable for others. So let's go through each one of them in more details. Your judgment is not about being perfect. It's not about you must have the answer. Your judgment is showing the ability that you understand what matters, what is urgent, what is risky, what is unclear, what needs escalation, what can wait, what decision is blocked, what will create problems later if we ignore it now. And so this is where young architects can mature quickly. You may not know everything, but you can start paying attention to the things that matter. You can start noticing patterns. You can start asking better questions. You can start connecting your task to a bigger project outcomes. And this is how you develop your judgment. Next signal is ownership. Ownership doesn't mean that you are responsible for everything, that you have all the work on your shoulders. And some people do think that. Ownership means that you take responsibility for movement. You don't just finish your part and disappear. You make sure that whoever needs that part of the project, it's clear enough what you have produced. And so you're not blocking their work. You're removing the risk. You ask the question, is everything clear? Can I help you understand what I have just produced? This is so much different than waiting passively. People start to appreciate and really respond to the people who take the ownership, take the responsibility, and they can start relying on them. And the third one is translation. Translation is something that is often undervalued in architecture because architects constantly are translating. You translate client needs into spatial ideas, design into documentation, consultant input into coordinated decision, constraints into options, complexity into clarity. And here is why this matters so much. Projects don't fail because people were not working hard. Projects fail because they were not aligned. Someone knows about the budget. Someone knows about construction details. Someone knows about client demands. And so Indispensable Architect puts it all together, connects the pieces together. So the project becomes one project, not just many pieces. Once you really understand that, and if you apply in your practice, you can become a future leader. Now, I want to flag something at this point, which is dangerous middle. Let me explain what I mean. So this is where many architects get stuck. They are useful, they are busy, they are appreciated, but they are not yet influential. People like working with you. They give you tasks and you do those tasks. They know that you can do it, but you are not necessarily invited to the decisions, and you are not necessarily seen as a future leader. You are not necessarily associated with the clear expert value. And this is dangerous because it feels like progress. You are busy. Everyone wants you to do something, but busy doesn't mean that you are growing. And you are thinking that you are advancing, but somehow you are not stepping up in your career. If your value is attached to delivery, you are building workload. And these are the people who are staying long hours and burning out. What you need to build is your leverage. You need to build your skills and leverage those skills. And here is the quick contrast between in-demand architect and indispensable architect. In-demand architect get work and indispensable architect get trusted. In-demand architects are known as capable. Indispensable architects are known as valuable. In-demand architects respond to tasks. Indispensable architects anticipate needs. In-demand architects produce outputs, and indispensable architects reduce uncertainty. In-demand architects are busy, and indispensable architects are influential. So this is not about hierarchy. It's about behavior, and you can begin shifting now in how you communicate, how you ask questions, how you flag risks, and how you explain your contribution, in how you connect your work to project outcomes. This is not about waiting for permission. It's about practicing your professional behaviors that make people trust you. And the final, I'd like to give you the 3 steps to build value visible. If you can start applying this practice in your work behavior. So 3 steps. You talk about risks, you talk about options, and you always talk about next steps. First, you name the risk. You always say what is happening here, what is clear, what is unclear, what is the pressure. Don't keep it in your head. Bring it forward professionally. The second is clarify options. Don't bring confusion and talk about the problems. Start creating structure, the way forward. And the third one is next steps. And this is when you show your contribution. You recommend next steps and you make your value visible. Someone will notice that you're doing it consistently. Let me show you how this sounds in real practice. Imagine you are sending email to your team leader and you would say, I just been looking at the facade detail and I identified a problem because the consultant's drawings doesn't coordinate. Let me know what you think. If you do it in an invisible way, you say that today I have reviewed the facade detail and I identify the risks that consultant's detail drawing doesn't match the architectural drawing. And so we have 2 options. We can adjust our architecture drawing to match the consultant's detail, or we can connect with the consultant and seek the clarification why it's not matching the architecture. And then my recommendation is to contact with the consultant. So let me know if you agree. And so this is how indispensable architect sounds in practice. If you can bring this to your work environment, this is when you start practicing indispensable behavior. Now, before I close, I want you to reflect. I want you to score yourself from 1 to 5 on the path. Are you useful or are you indispensable? Score number 1, you rarely do that. And score number 5 is you doing it consistently. So I'll read the questions, start scoring yourself. Do people ask for my opinion or only my output? Do I flag risks before they become urgent? Do I understand how my task affects the project outcome? Do I communicate progress in terms of value, not just activity? Do I bring options, not just problems? Do I recommend next steps with confidence? Do people trust me with ambiguity? So this is not about judgment. It's about awareness. The goal is for you to understand where you stand. If your score is mostly 1 and 2, you are still in a task mode. If you score yourself around 3, that means that you begin to be trusted. And if you scored between 4 and 5, means that you are on the way to be indispensable. The goal is awareness and growth. Decide where you need to grow. Let me bring it all together. You cannot become indispensable if your value is invisible. Your next stage of your development is not just become better technically, but also become clearer how you think, clearer how you communicate, clearer in how you show your value, clearer how you connect your work with decisions, risks, and outcomes. And this is how architects begin to move from capable to trusted, from useful to strategic, and from in demand to indispensable. If there is one idea I want you to leave with tonight, it's that the indispensable architect is not the architect who does everything. It is the person who makes the project clearer, safer, and easier to move forward. And that begins when you understand your value and learn how to make it visible. If you want to understand where is your value, where is unclear, where is hidden and undeveloped, I want you to take the Architect Clarity Scan. It's free. It takes only about 20 minutes, and it will show you 4 things: your strengths, your expert direction, your blockages, and your gaps. And the way I can help you, when you have your results, you can meet with me and I can show you exactly what does that mean and what would be the next step for you to do. Because the future of your career will not be shaped by how hard you work. It will be shaped by how clearly others understand the value you create. This is it. I invite you to ask the questions. If you don't have the questions, if you could share what is started to be more clear for you, what is shifting. Maybe you realize that your gap is not the talent, it's a signal. Maybe you realize you've been doing valuable work, but not translating it clearly enough. Or maybe you already know what you want to become known for next.